Yeah, dude. Like, not much to add here, but this is the kind of shit that just pisses me off. Like, I feel like we're constantly talking about the same numbers in a positive light and then a negative light, and it's like we had one article just talking about their investments in AI, and it's like, well, their revenues increased 90% year over year in Q4. And then the next article, I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty fucking good. Like 19%, like that's, as a growth company, that's pretty damn good. And then the next one, I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty bad. Like we didn't live up to expectations.
Had a terrible quarter.
Like, fuck, man, dude. Like Jesus Christ.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cables to Clouds podcast, Fortnightly news. As always, I'm your host, Tim, and with me, of course, is the other guy, Chris Miles.
Lesser known guy.
I wouldn't go that far. We got a book out, so like he's famous.
That's true.
Now.
That's true.
He's a famous
worldwide
author now, and so he is So him and Steve are famous authors, and I'm just kind of tagging along with the rest of them. All right, let's just jump right into it here, not stand on ceremony. So it's interesting couple of weeks. We're not going to cover everything, and there's plenty to cover, but we're not going to cover everything. So we got an article from SDX Central. This is it's a little bit of an opinion piece, kind of, but basically the Department of Justice sued to stop the merger from HP and Juniper. Merger, I guess HP bought Juniper. It's not really a merger, is it? We reported this last year, $14 billion. If you remember, we said how ridiculously cheap that was. But anyway, so it was set to close at the end of the year, and the Department of Justice actually sued to basically block the acquisition. And the reason stated was there's only three wireless providers, like enterprise wireless providers on the market, which is Cisco, Juniper, and HPE. So, Aruba, Mist, and, Aranet or Meraki, depending. And the DOJ says basically allowing the acquisition of Juniper by HPE would take it down to two vendors and stifle innovation or competition stifle competition. So this is kind of an interesting move by the DOJ. I think it's interesting because it kind of proves that they don't necessarily understand the wireless market, which is not really a surprise. Basically, the article is basically positing like, well, will Cisco benefit from this suing to block? And HPE and Juniper have basically been using the argument against this block, saying that allowing them to merge actually provides more competition with Cisco because they can merge their tech stacks. They can get Mist and Aruba and whatnot, and they can actually be a good competition to Cisco in this market. And by blocking them from blocking Juniper from being acquired by HPE, it's actually having the opposite effect, where the WLAN market is being split and Cisco's kind of winning by default. So, and that's kind of what this article suggests as well. So I don't know. I have my own opinions. What do you think, Chris? Do you think that's accurate?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's like, I think the overall kind of thought here, or the findings here is saying that, if this merger goes through, then that means two companies will own 70% of the market cap for the WLAN market, right? And it's like, I don't know, man. It's like, that's like, I don't know what that does for innovation necessarily. I mean, I think there are people that are probably in that bucket now that are either HPE customers or probably not. Most likely they're Juniper customers that might end up going to something else just because of this, and they probably chose not the top two vendors for a specific reason. But I don't know. I don't know if that really kind of does anything to the competition or the kind of free market, so to say, because I mean, even within those multiple umbrellas, there are still several choices able to be made there, right? You have the kind of traditional Cisco wireless with their, wireless controllers and things like that. There's Meraki, which is a entirely different solution. I'll be honest, I haven't been that close to it, so I don't know how much integration they've done with each other over the past few years, but I imagine it's probably not a ton. And then the same on the other side, there's, HPE they bought Aruba years ago, right? So that's, and I definitely I see a lot of that implemented today. But then Juniper, we talked about this back in, November or whatever, the reason why this is happening is because, from my perspective, it's because HPE wants Mist, right? They want Mist AI and they want that capability. And I don't know if that's to incorporate it into Aruba. That doesn't seem likely to me. It seems like it would be a very, it will be not a frictionless install to get that. So I don't know. There's I can see the justification that there's kind of two big umbrellas over that 70%, but I think that's going to sway people too. That might cause people to hey, maybe I should start looking at Ruckus or some other vendors that are in this space, right? Because I'm sure the other vendors that are that are in the wireless space, they're hey, fuck you, we're here too. They're probably pretty pissed. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. 70% of the market is obviously the lion's share between those three vendors. I'm also not 100% convinced that allowing HPE to acquire Juniper does functionally, consolidate the market. Like you said, there's so many, even within the vendors that are out there, there's so many different types of wireless type solutions that it doesn't even feel like the same. I think, obviously Mist AI was a huge thing that HPE wanted. But even then, Aruba hasn't really been enterprise grade. It's really always been kind of small, medium business. So if HPE wanted to capture more of the enterprise market, the acquiring Juniper for Mist had its own value there. I don't know about them going after, and we talked about this forever ago, right? I'm not sure how much of the data center market or firewall market they're interested in. That might have just been collateral damage. Hey, we get that too. But the big one is I'm not sure that allowing this or blocking this acquisition fundamentally protects the market from, lack of competition. Right. And Ubiquity and like you said, Ruckus and some of the other ones that are out there, they're 30% of the market. I don't know. At the end of the day, I think the DOJ is thinking this is another Microsoft type of move, and I don't think it's anywhere near that cut and dry, than here. So the question that the article poses, though, basically is this a good thing for Cisco? And I would argue that it kind of, by default, it has to be good for Cisco. Because any further consolidation or cross pollination or whatnot of a rival's tech stack has to be bad. Because Catalyst and Meraki, there've been they've changed labels, but the actual integration is still extremely poor to none almost. So yeah, they still sell them as completely different set of solutions.
Yeah, I don't see how Cisco could come out any worse in this situation,
right?
Because of this, right? It's at the end of the day, then it's still three separate products, and then they're competing with Juniper and HPE just like they were today, right? So yeah, it's kind of a obvious default, I think.
Yep. Absolutely. So I am curious to see if this kind of pushback by HP and Juniper go anywhere. Or actually, I'll be honest, I don't even know what the appeals process. It says sued, so obviously it has to go through the courts, right? Ultimately, it has to go through the courts, and so they got to make their cases on why it is or is not a stifling of innovation or antitrust or whatever, So we'll have to watch this one and see, because this is not unusual for big tech companies to buy each other. So well, this is going to happen again.
So long story short, this has at least been delayed by, probably somewhere between 4 to 6 months at the very least.
Oh, I bet longer than that.
Yeah,
true. given the situation we're in and the big money and the big, the DOJ is involved. I'm curious now. I have to say, I don't know when this was filed. Was this filed before or after
new administration?
Yeah. That might be worth. That's a good point, right? So the Biden's DOJ might have filed this, and Trump's DOJ might be like, "No, we don't care. Let big companies buy big companies. This is great for make America great again." So I was curious. So let's keep an eye on this one.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, next up, two relatively quick ones for CIO Dive. We won't go too much into the article itself, but basically we have an article each about AWS as well as Google about some investments into AI capacity. So AWS is looking to invest about $100 billion for increased capacity, specifically targeted around AI workloads, and kind of the same thing for Google, investing $75 billion. And they're more or less following suit from what we can tell here, because I think if you recall back, I think on like the 14th of Jan, somewhere around there, we reported that Microsoft was putting $80 billion into cloud data centers for the purpose of AI. So it's, number one in the market was doing 100 billion, number two is doing 80, and then third is doing 75. So that's kind of what we see in terms of investment here. I'm curious, like this just kind of sparked something in my mind, and I'm sure many other people are thinking this, like with the whole kind of rumbling that we saw around the DeepSeek models and the cost optimization there. It's really, I'm curious, like, because I feel like that what that is bringing to the light is the ability to do more with less, or maybe I should say like the ability that you'd only have to do so, like the extensive piece to build a foundation LLM can happen far less often than we thought it was going to happen, right? And maybe you're using those foundation models to build these smaller, more optimized models that still kind of reach the same outcome or a very similar outcome, right? Is it good enough, kind of thing. So I'm like, oh man, I don't know how much this is actually going to come to fruition in the long term, based on how that has disrupted everything, right? I mean, that's my kind of what's rolling around in my head. I don't know about you, Tim. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, that's so. I mean, I don't think people appreciate how colossally large these numbers are, right? Like 80 billion, 75 billion, 100 billion. I mean, it's billion with a B, and you're so used to seeing this number now that it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like about how much you should spend. It sounds like how much you should spend for AI, but like, I mean, that's an absolute shit ton of money. Like, yeah. And where's the bomb? I want to know what does the bill of materials look like for $100 billion? It's
all Cisco branded SFPs.
Oh, well, that explains it. Yeah. Oh, they're using single mode fiber. Oh yeah, okay, that'll do it. Oh man, no, it's insane, right? Like, so now this had to happen to some degree. They've been having capacity issues forever, right? And just as before even AI even came into the data center, they were having capacity issues. Now this is specialized equipment, of course, so it's not quite the same. It's not like they're competing with their EC2 instances or something, somebody's EC2 instances for capacity. But think of the capacity of the data centers themselves as well, right? Remember, we were talking with Peter Jones about how ridiculously, like how many racks and racks and racks of power cooling and gear it takes to build one of these things, right? I do agree with you that what we're actually going to see is a splintering away from large language models into kind of agent focused, specialized models. And that's probably what it should have been, but you know how it is, like all technology, you start off with the generalized thing, and then okay, now I know how that works. Now we can, specialize it. So, and I'm hopeful as well as you that that actually really does end up being, less tokens, less power, water, cooling to get to the same, to get to good answers. It should, right? Instead of lighting up the entire model every time somebody asks a question, anytime someone asks a question, rather, you've got this very specialized model where you can just light up the parts that matter and just physics suggests that this should be an easier thing for everybody to do. So,
Right.
again, this reminds me of, I don't know why, but all of a sudden I got reminded of this old sci-fi book I read forever ago called The Forever War, where like these two, I don't know if you ever read it or not, but these two, like Earth and I forget some alien race or something were locked in this conflict, but they were so far apart from each other that to send troops, basically, it would take like 1,000 years for the troops to arrive for them to fight.
Right.
And long story short, basically at some point, I think it was near the end of the novel,
Spoilers.
the ships that they had sent out 1,000 years ago were slower than the ships that got sent out 500 years ago. So the ones that were sent out afterward were actually arriving before they were, because the tech was so much better, right? Like the tech was better and everything. So I kind of wonder if it's like that. Like we're going to pledge $100 billion to grow this AI infrastructure, but the tech is getting good enough that maybe you don't need it.
Your take is much cooler in mine because it has a sci-fi background. Where my mind went, I was like, is this kind of just like the evolution of the data center? To me, is like, for a while people were building out their own data centers, right? Like, in a facility, something like that. And, now we've kind of got to the point where people don't build out data centers. Maybe they rent a rack and a colo or something like that, or maybe they just put it all in cloud. Now, we kind of started out this conversation with like, oh, you need to build your own LLM. You need to do all this stuff. It's almost like people like before the boots were ever on the ground with that, those marching orders. We've already skipped it. So it's fucking, it's wild. I don't know if that just speaks to kind of like the agility of the market or what, but man, things are changing on a fucking dime, man.
Yep. And that's why it's so hard to invest. I guess that's my point, right? Like Amazon is going to invest 100 billion and Google 70. I don't think they really have any idea what that money's for, like, because the tech is changing so quickly. What does that even mean? By the time you've half built this thing, you spend half the money and the whole freaking technology's changed, and now you got to do something completely different, probably.
Hopefully all these orders are processed before the DeepSeek thing, so that the NVIDIA sales reps can surely get their money, right?
Yeah, get their commission checks for the quarter. Yeah. Okay, so the next one actually is from CRN in Australia, and this one is an article about how Amazon, the parent company, I don't know if parent company is correct, but like I don't remember what the relationship is anymore between Amazon and AWS. Is it parent company? Is it sister? Like I don't know how they. Anyway, so Amazon itself was able to beat Wall Street estimates. So from a quarterly revenue perspective, so they strong retail business. We'll see how long that lasts, but basically. This article from CRN points out that the cloud computing unit of Amazon, AWS, reported a 19% rise in revenue to, this is ridiculous, to $28.79 billion, falling short of the estimates of $28.87 billion, according to the data, in this article. So, so cloud growth lags is what the title says. And to me, like, we're working on such ridiculous numbers. Like still, here we are many years later, this thing is still growing 19% in a quarter. And they missed their quote unquote target by, what is that? Is that $8 million? What's 0.87? Like there's 0.79 and 0.87 billion. It's such a ridiculous, anyway. Targets are, honestly, I'd say that was a pretty good target. Whoever set that target obviously did, was pretty spot on with their estimations, I would think. So, and then the article goes on to point out that like the retail sector offset the AWS's quote unquote cloud weakness, which I'm still like scratching my head on. Like, I guess beauty's in the eye of the beholder, or like math is,
right.
I don't know, whatever. So cloud weakness, cloud growth lagging at only 19%. Guys, I'm sorry. We probably should go ahead and repatriate everything at this point.
Yeah, dude. Not much to add here, but this is the kind of shit that just pisses me off. I feel like we're constantly talking about the same numbers in a positive light and then a negative light, and it's like, we had one article just talking about their investments in AI, and it's like, well, their revenues increased 90% year over year in Q4. And then the next article, I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty fucking good. Like 19%, like that's, as a growth company, that's pretty damn good. And then the next one, I was like, oh yeah, that was pretty bad. Like we didn't live up to expectations.
Had a terrible quarter.
Like, fuck, man, dude. Like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to cover the numbers because they usually help us understand a little bit about the just the industry in general, where the cloud industry is going and whatnot. But it's tough when you get these article titles that, like they turn on a dime, right? It depending on what they want to say. It's either bad or it's good. I'm of the opinion that 19% growth, like you pointed out, is pretty fucking okay. Like, like comparatively.
Sounds pretty nice.
Considering that Amazon or AWS is already the 800-pound gorilla in the market.
That's the thing, is like where they stand today, 19% sounds fucking huge.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, Cisco would love to see some 19% growth, I'm pretty sure, right? Or pick a dominator of the industry that they're in, and I'm sure they'd love to see almost 20% growth. So anyway, no big deal here. Just kind of a funny article. But yeah, let's move on.
Sweet. All right. So last one we have today, which I'll be honest, this obviously is is a cloud-focused podcast, and this isn't necessarily a name that we hear a lot in the cloud world today, but we have an article from CRN again about SolarWinds, which, if you're familiar, is the observability and IT management vendor that we've probably all used for many years in the past, is being acquired by a San Francisco-based private equity firm called Turn River Capital, which is, companies getting acquired by private equity is usually kind of a troublesome thing and kind of sad. But, they of course spin this as a positive thing, that the private equity firm is going to, accelerate business and transform the company, et cetera. I'll be honest, man, we haven't heard a lot out of SolarWinds since it was during COVID when they had the supply chain attack, right. which was really bad. Albeit there was like some, I'm misremembering here. Was it Russian backed hackers or was it Chinese? I can't remember.
I don't remember if it was Russian or Chinese, to be honest with you. But it was in their software, right? It was a supply chain of one of the packages. So it was bad. Yeah. So, I don't know if this is kind of the start of the end for SolarWinds. I hope not. Just because I know they're a name that has been relative to me for many years, and in terms of network monitoring and things like that. But didn't expect to see this. It was a $4.4 billion all cash deal as well, which I thought that sounded rather low, just because of like how big I assume they still were in the on-prem world. But maybe that's not the case nowadays. But I don't know. Well, I mean, going all cash usually gets you a discount, so you don't have to worry about financing and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, $4.4 billion. Yeah, I remember when SolarWinds was a juggernaut, and I'm not saying they're not still. I actually don't know. I mean, we used it at the last time I had an enterprise job. We used it. I remember many times getting a call at the end of every single quarter by my SolarWinds rep who was desperate to sell me something. And then if you ever had the misfortune of downloading a free trial of a SolarWinds product, if you were unfortunate enough to supply a real phone number, you would basically be on the list forever. They were definitely very aggressive.
They're still calling them to this day.
Yeah, they were very aggressive. No, luckily it was a work phone. They were very aggressive. And I don't know. I mean, SolarWinds has been around for a while. Like, anybody in the network space knows SolarWinds. I don't know, man. I have yet to know. I have yet to find the company, the private equity firm, the company bought by a private equity firm that, PE is where good ideas and good companies usually go to die. So, yeah.
I'm looking at Turn River's portfolio as well on their website, and I'll say of all the companies that I was seeing here, many of them have exited at some point. That doesn't necessarily say they exited in went on to do great things, but of all the logos on here, I recognize one. So I don't know if that says anything about what this means for SolarWinds, or maybe I'm just, ignorant to to this market. I mean, there's a lot of like application stack specific companies in here that I have no business knowing who or what they do, to be honest with you. So that could also be a piece of it. But yeah, I'm not. This doesn't leave me feeling warm and fuzzy about SolarWinds. I'll say that.
I mean, yeah. So the whole thing about private equity, right, is that they acquire companies with the goal of essentially making more money than they paid for the company, right? If they destroy a company but make $10 million off of the process, then they consider that a success, and they move on to the next company. They're the trademark of in-shitification. So generally they will buy a company, in-shitify it as much as possible, as legally possible to do so, or raise the prices, and just wait until all the customers leave. They get as much money as they can out of it until the whole thing's run into the ground. Feel free to prove me wrong. I'm sure there's some PE out there that didn't destroy the company that they bought. I can't think of any at the moment. I know several, but yeah. So, I guess we'll see. Time will tell on the SolarWinds thing.
As always, yep. Time will tell.
All right. Well, I think that's all the stories we have for this week. If we missed anything, of course, please do let us know in the comments of our YouTube channel, or email, or smoke signal. I don't know, Discord. However you want to let us know, that's fine. We'd love to hear from you. We always love to hear from you. Okay, so on the behalf of myself and Mr. Miles, we'll go ahead and close out this episode of the Cables Clouds News Podcast. Please follow us.
Buy our book. Please
buy our book. Oh yeah, we need to do an episode about the book, probably, just to show it off to everybody. We'll get Steve
probably
on here.
Should.
So
probably should. Yep.
We'll do that, and you guys can see all the cool stuff we've been working on for the last like almost 2 years now. I don't know how long it's been. Anyway, it's been a while. Anyway, all right. So look for that in an upcoming episode. Until then, everyone, take care and see you later.
Hi everyone, it's Chris, and this has been the Cables to Clouds podcast. Thanks for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, as well as subscribe and turn on notifications for our YouTube channel to be notified of all our new episodes. Follow us on socials at Cables to Clouds. You can also visit our website for all of the show notes at cablestoclouds.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.